Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's discussion. I'm Tiffany Trin, Senior Marketing Manager with the Knox Company, and we're excited to host today's session in collaboration with LogRx and New Windsor EMS. Today, we'll be exploring how New Windsor EMS modernized narcotics accountability using a unified security solution from Knox and LogRx, one that has helped their team simplify compliance, strengthen security, and improve operational control and daily workflows for both their crews and supervisors. We've got a great discussion and a fantastic panel lined up for you today. But before we get started, let's just go over a quick few housekeeping items. Audio. All attendees will remain muted during the presentation, and then the chat is only available to presenters and the panelists during the session. But we do encourage you to submit questions anytime through the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, and these questions may be answered live during the Q&A session at the end. If you want to enable live transcriptions, go ahead and click on that show caption in the toolbar, and it'll transcribe during the webinar. Also, today's session will be recorded. We'll share the link afterwards so you can rewatch or share it with your team. We'll also send up follow-up materials such as this case study, key takeaways, and also the contact information of our panelists. And with that, I'll turn it over to Clive Savicul with LogRx, who will be moderating today's discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Tiffany. Happy to be here today with everyone. So my background, I'm a retired fire chief here in California, and I've been a paramedic since the 90s. And so I started LogRx, which is a narcotics tracking software. And then we were lucky enough to partner with Knox, who's been in the industry for decades. And so we've come together to build the all-in-one product. But most importantly, we thought today we could kind of take together all of our experience and then bring in an industry professional who we have with us today. And that's Shannon Cohn. She's the Assistant Chief of New Windsor EMS in New York. She's been in the industry 20 years. But Shannon, I'll let you introduce yourself as well as your bio.
Yep, so I've been in the EMS for about 20 years. I started in commercial EMS, so I've seen a whole bunch of different narcotic management systems, the good and the bad. I've been at New Windsor EMS for about 8 years and assistant chief there for about 3. And I assist my chief also with, and I help him get other agencies like their narcotics and compliance and everything, or if they're going to upgrade to ALS, I assist them with that.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks for helping us out today. We're also lucky to have Tamara. She is one of the leaders at Knox, and she has not just a ton of experience on the fire side with the industry, but now with EMS as well. So to help with the security of narcotics, we're lucky to have her to kind of give some perspective on that end. But Tamara, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Clive. So I'm Tamara Hatzinger. I'm the Director of Product Management at Knox, and I do manage the EMS product portfolio that includes Knox Connect integration with LogRx, med vaults, station vaults. From an experience perspective, I have about 30 years of experience in the access control and locking hardware industry.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll jump into some questions. Like Tiffany said, anybody that has some questions they might have for the Q&A portion, you can fire those off anytime and we'll get to them at the end. But I'll start off going back to you, Shannon. If you can just give us some perspective on, New Windsor EMS, the region you're in, and kind of a little bit more about your agency.
Sure. So our agency, we have about 90 to 100 people. We're kind of like 40% paid to volunteers, so we're mixed. We cover New Windsor, Cornwall, and the village of Cornwall on Hudson in New York, which is about 70 square miles. And we have everything from mountains to hiking. We have a big airport, industrial. So we tend to get a lot of like bad MVAs and stuff like that because we have really high traffic roads.
A lot of trauma type calls. Regards to the narcotics tracking, because that's both Knox and my background for today's purposes. What was your biggest challenges kind of before adopting technology with managing narcotics?
It drove me nuts. Paper. It was just too many pages, too many binders. We had huge 2-inch binders everywhere, and it was just too many steps. and it just took everything way too long to do. The audits took forever because you had to track down everything and cross-reference all the PCRs. And then you can run into human error of miscounting or poor penmanship like I have. It's hard for other people to read my writing. And most of the things didn't get done from the crews because it was just too much. Like if they use a narcotic, they had to fill out this form, and then they had to write down on this form what they gave and how much they wasted just so we can cross-reference it all. So it ended up being like missteps and pages go missing and they rip. It was just a mess. It drove me nuts.
Yeah, I spent most of my career at Contra Costa County, a big fire department in the San Francisco area. And I found, because when I started, everything was pen and paper. And now looking back, it was kind of like driving without a seatbelt. You're fine until something goes wrong, and then it's too late to go back and fix it. So that's been a common issue within the industry. And so I guess leading to the next question would be, why have you seen accountability be such a critical element with narcotics tracking and being in compliance?
Well, narcotics can make or break your company, or it can make or break you as a provider, depending on if there's any discrepancies like that. They're very closely monitored, as they should be. So they need to be secured and accounted for at all times, not just, when you're able to go check the papers. I know some agencies have so many narcotic agents, and it's almost too many hands in the pot, so they leave a lot more room for discrepancies or diversions. So it's easier just to kind of keep it down to the two. So with the technology and the software and the vaults, it just makes it so much easier to keep visibility and everything.
Yeah, and I guess with that kind of in context, I guess it'd be for Tamara, the Med Vault and Station Vault weren't created in a vacuum. I'm sure that Knox saw the need. What was the first thing or the perspective that you got as to why this need was such a big challenge with the industry?
Yeah. So when I started at Knox, I can't tell you how many departments I went into, and they showed us how they were storing their narcotics, and they were in file cabinets with, just a key that you could get off of, Amazon, or that could be easily duplicated. And so as the regulatory landscape has changed and that's become more important, it was really important to us to be able to provide something that was secure, reliable, and easy to use. And I think we're going to talk a lot about regulatory compliance today, and that is a critical factor. But I think there's an even simpler reason why these types of products are important in EMS, and it really comes down to time and labor. Demands on departments seem to be always increasing, and with staffing challenges, automation is a great way to simplify, workflows, get that compliance in place, and just really offer real benefits to, the organization.
That's great. Yeah. So for solutions, Shannon, this would be back at you. What did you guys do in the past for the storage for narcotics?
So we had med vaults for quite a while now, but the only other alternative to it that we possibly had was a two-key system, which would just leave it so that the keys get misplaced, or someone took it home and now you can't get into the vault. It's just not conducive to anything.
Yeah. Did that impact, I guess this goes with using the paper logs as well. Were there challenges you saw with audits?
Yeah, it would take all day to do any audit, and you'd have to have all the binders out, all the pages out, and everything pulled up to try to figure out who did what, who used what, and who wasted what, and why this one's missing because someone didn't put it on a sheet.
Did you get pressure from the EMS agencies I've always worked under? They've been pretty tight as far as scrutinizing us for narcotics and so on. Was that part of the motivating factor for training?
Yeah. Yep, it was a big one.
Gotcha. And then I guess for day-to-day operations with your team, I guess what was the take on their side in regards to how they looked at tracking narcotics? If you're using pen and paper, how serious were they taking it?
Not very. They tended pencil whip the counts. They would just copy the one that was before it, whether it was correct or not. They didn't fill out half the sheets half the time, and the only way we were able to keep track of it was if we physically went and looked at the binders and looked at the sheets, which takes more time, and then we had to track them down. So they did it for the most part, but it wasn't really well kept.
Gotcha. So with the paper logs, I mean, I know how difficult it can be with change within an organization. I mean, not just EMS, fire, most industries, change is always there's apprehension. How long did it take, or what were your motivating factors to finally make that decision to transition to like the med vaults?
So it was just organization and visibility. It's nice to be able to look back and see who opened what and when with the med vaults.
Gotcha. Did that change the perspective of your staff so they see, okay, if management is taking this more serious, they can see when we're accessing the safe and for how long? Did that kind of change their behavior and how well they were logging the narcotics?
Yeah, a little bit. They kind of assumed like we weren't watching, but then they started kind of catching on that like we would see it and be like, okay, you opened the safe this day, but like you didn't do a full count or anything like that. So it did help with organizing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an experience with the department where we had narcotics go missing, and when they looked at the paper logs, there was only, I think, 4 or 5 dates out of the month where they had actually done the checks. And I think the response from the staff was basically, well, no one's checking these anyway until the drugs go missing. So, how much do you guys really care? And so I think that highlights the value of, just the staff knowing that you take it serious. So then they're going to take it just as serious. So I guess that leads to the next question for Tamara. Is there something you've seen with your customers as far as compliance feedback that they've gotten since they transitioned to MedVaults?
So I think just keeping the honest guy honest, right? So the fact that they know that there's accountability and it's really easy to determine accountability. In the system, you can see how long the door is open. So if somebody says they did a thorough count and you can see in the system that door was open for less than a minute, then you kind of ask some questions about what was going on, with that. And then I think overall, I think it's easier to achieve compliance when the workflow is really simple and familiar. So introducing these compliance tools really, but making it something that's really easy to adopt. So we recently launched a MedVault series that has a keypad and a badge reader. And from a user perspective, access now is just like any other door that they access. So it's really intuitive and fast and easy to train. And I think it's a lot easier sell to the user base when you have a product like that just really feels kind of seamless to them, and it is quick and easy.
I guess with that in mind, what have you seen or gotten feedback on with the best compliance? And so if a badge reader, keypad, a simple key, what have you heard from customers as far as what helps with compliance the most?
I think just having the flexibility that the MedVaults and the integration offer, and also the rapidness with which they can gather data. So from a flexibility standpoint, we really wanted to build a product that could adapt to whatever access needs the department has. So if, the local compliance policies require multi-factor authentication, it can do that. If the department is like, we really want this to be fast for our users, you've got the option to do, a badge or a PIN. And, if only some of the vaults need a higher level of security, you can do that as well. So they really can tailor it. And I think they appreciate that no matter how they want to structure their environment and the level of compliance they need, that they can implement it and then get the data really rapidly. So, and I think, Clive, that's really one of the benefits of the integration, is the ability to get that data very quickly and use it in ways that save them time, as opposed to going, doing what they used to do in the past.
Yeah, and for everyone listening or watching, the integration Tamara's referring to is now because LogRx integrates with Knox, the two platforms complement one another, and ultimately the end result still could have been achieved by using each program independently. But I think speaking for our companies, everything we do is we want to make things easier for the end user. We want the end user to have a better experience. As Tamara said, we want to be able to have our program help, not hinder the user, and also conform with existing policies. Because I know from my perspective, anytime you change a policy, it can go to meet and confer, just can be some challenges. And so we want to make things user friendly. And I guess Shannon, on that note, with implementing, was there any challenge with policy adoption with either the MedVault or LogRx with your folks?
No, I tried to remain as transparent as possible so they all knew kind of what I was up to when I was doing it, and my ideas for it. So I made like memos about it with pictures, and in my experience, a lot of EMS providers, we have short attention spans, so if it's too wordy, they're not going to read it. So I did pictures. I did a flow chart, basically like if you use a narcotic, this is what you do, and then if you needed to waste it, this is what you do after that. And I laminated it and I put it right underneath the vault. And this way it didn't leave any room for guessing or questions. I did get a lot of phone calls at first from everyone, and I still do sometimes, but I'd rather them call me than try to figure it out themselves sometimes.
Yeah, I found that with anytime we adopt a new program or something in the fire service or EMS, the more training we do up front, then the less kind of questions we get down the road. So that's valuable. In fact, on our LogRx drug box, we have a QR code at the bottom that people scan to have little video walkthroughs. So I guess on the implementation topic, once you adopted these programs, what were kind of the steps you took? I know you just mentioned some of the policies, but did you roll them out in phases? I mean, you have a decent sized agency. What worked best for you with the onboarding piece?
So like the admin side of it, I did it in steps basically to figure out what system I thought worked best for our system also. And it kind of took like a few trial and errors with it, but when I put it out there, I had all the resources for them ready, and I just ripped the Band-Aid off because it was easier then to, instead of doing baby steps, just to rip the Band-Aid off, get it done. I did have them double up on the paper for like a month or so, and then after I realized everything was working perfectly, I just took it away.
Nice. Glad to hear it was relatively smooth.
Mm.
Was there something you learned in kind of the onboarding process that was kind of valuable that you would change if doing it over again?
No, there's nothing that would change on it. It was easy. It was actually extremely easy to do.
Does your organization kind of adopt technology? I know newer generations, it's become the norm. I grew up in the fire service with like Vietnam vets and so on, and there's no technology whatsoever that we would work with at the beginning. So with your group, did you feel like it was a pretty good audience for adopting technology?
It was a mixed bag. We ran into a lot of challenges. One of them was like people remembering their app passwords for the app stores just to download the app or not having room on their phone. But we did have we went from like the youngest group to the oldest group we had. A guy that was retiring within months of me rolling this out. So I kind of catered it towards him. So it made it easier for him. And he was a retired fireman before he retired with us. So it basically made it fireman proof. And it was just easy for him to even do it.
Gotcha. I guess with kind of that in mind, was there other aspects with the adoption process that required any kind of policy changes?
We did end up having to completely redo our narcotic policy for the state, and had to get it approved by them first prior to going live, which was a little tedious, but it needed to be updated.
Did they understand kind of why these changes are being made? I know, you go through paramedic school and you realize how strict it is to manage narcotics. You realize from a practitioner how lethal these drugs are if you mismanage them. But when you started, if you have someone that's used to something as simple as pen and paper and it's just seems casual, when you do make these changes, did they kind of understand why the importance of it?
Yeah, I think so. It was kind of a learning curve for him, but when I started there, it was pretty archaic for a lot of the stuff. So it was a lot of paper with other things. So my goals over the last few years has been to bring us into the 21st century for stuff. And this was one of them. And when I kind of stayed transparent with them and talked to them about it, they all realized it. They all knew why. So it was pretty easily received.
That's good. Yeah. I think back when my agency was on pen and paper, we had to check the narcotics by 9 a.m. every morning. And without exception, everyone always put 0815 for narcotics check. And it's like, no, everyone's inside having coffee, talking. So that was one of the motivators for me to build a program where it timestamps it. But yeah, I think that adopting change can really help punctuate, the importance of it. And I guess speaking from my old agency, we had a diversion that time those narcotics went missing, that they checked the logs and there was only a handful of signatures over a month. And so that was the catalyst for that department to go to, it was basically an online spreadsheet. But was there anything similar with your organization or something within your region that you saw help move things forward?
No, I think we were one of the first agencies in the area to do it, to go online with it.
Gotcha.
So Clive, I think, we've heard from Shannon about the agency experience with implementation and the impact to the end users. But I wonder if you can describe for our attendees the integrated solution kind of architecture and what it takes to set it up from a technology perspective.
Yeah. And surprisingly for a software company CEO, I'm terrible with technology. As a fire chief, I had a flip phone, and that was only 4 years ago. So what we wanted to do from the technology standpoint and build a seamless workflow was basically have something that the user found easy. So just from my experience as a fire chief, firefighter, and so on, I knew that they have their job to do, and they want to have everything help them do their job, not have something be a distraction. And so that's why we looked at, okay, how can we build something that makes them look forward to using it and there's going to be good compliance? Because if they don't like it, if the app is difficult to use or if they have a faulty hardware of some sort, then they're going to say, this doesn't work. It's not helping me do my job. And they're going to toss it aside. And so we thought, okay, how can we work with that? And from our perspective, because we were a startup and we were just building it from scratch, we didn't want to have to design any hardware. So we took advantage of like a smartphone, because then we have the scanner and the biometrics and everything that the billionaire companies like Google and Apple have already developed. So we took advantage of that piece. So the narcotics software side, the tracking piece, we built to be easy and simple to use. And then luckily when we crossed paths with you and Knox a couple of years ago, we thought, you know what, we don't want to get in the hardware business. You have software that will integrate with our software. So it's a perfect marriage to build something that gives an all-in-one solution for folks like New Windsor. And so by having something simple to use, kind of the return on the investment for people like Shannon is the time saved. So she knows she's going to get the compliance with her folks. She knows she doesn't have to stay awake at night worrying about fentanyl on the rigs and are they being monitored. And if she wants to go check and see, how long have guys done their narcotics check today, then not only can she just get an alert on her phone if they don't, but she can go into, Knox Connect, the Knox software or LogRx software, and see when people are accessing the safe, when they did the checks. in our case, it even tracks the GPS location. And so I think from the end user standpoint, we wanted to work with Knox and we build an all-in-one program to make it just easy. I think that's key word. You find easy and then you work backwards on how we can make that happen for people like Shannon. And so we hope we've been successful. And fortunately, I think from our perspective and with Knox, we're always working to find better ways to do it. We're never just content with saying, okay, we've built a solution. Now let's just wait and have people come to us. We reinvest everything back into development, and then honestly do things like this to help educate the rest of the people in the industry, because we've all put in a ton of time, many years of work to get to where we're at.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, this integration really was the result of our mutual customers coming to each of us separately and saying, hey, why can't I see all of this data in one place, to help generate reports? And I think, the benefit of the cloud platforms, like software's been around for a while, but the cloud to cloud really allows us to streamline that data gathering and provide for reporting all in one place. And, also the benefit of really the kind of low cost of entry with departments not having to provide, the computer hardware and things like that, or the manpower, or, God forbid you have to go find somebody in the IT department to help you, which we hear is a problem, depending on, your agency. So really just the ease of how easy we make it to put these programs in place, and how fast you can see the benefit from them. Shannon, was that kind of your experience?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I guess to that point, especially with Knox's sake, what have you seen on the customer service side? I know that's a very, very high importance with us, and we've recognized it with Knox, but just curious what you've seen from your folks that help people in the field or in the managers.
Yeah, I think just the automation, not chasing down paper logs. Once people get past, the initial learning curve, and depending on the agency, I think we provide a lot of assistance to help people get over that learning curve and help them through implementation. But what we hear very consistently from our departments is they really do see advantages, especially when it comes to investigations. Sometimes investigations need to go back years in time, and as Shannon, said, that means going through 2-inch binders, like, however many dozens of them or hundreds of them, to gather data, and just the logistics effort involved in trying to pull all that together. So when a department can go into a system and instantly run an access report over, however many years they need to, for a user, or a handful of users, or a specific location, or looking for things like, use of an override key, or, the duration of the door being open for too long. It really helps move things forward quickly. And I think, we hear that as the advantages. The disruption that audits and, investigations do to a department, it's really, if you can do a thorough investigation quickly, get it resolved, and then move on to, the normal day-to-day business and really put your focus there. I think that's important. And that is really one of the advantages that we hear, when we help people take a look at their data.
Yeah, we found that customer service it's a differentiator in how people perceive your organization. And so internally we take kind of the attitude. I don't know if any of you have heard the JetBlue founder, David Neeleman, but he has a book called Flying High, and he talks a lot about customer service. And so he would talk about how people would call in with a problem and they would treat that customer so good that they are a better customer having had the problem and talked to them than if they'd never had it in the first place. And so From our perspective with software, inevitably there's going to be bugs, there's going to be some sort of issue, or there might be a problem with their phone, but they blame on our software. And so we always put a high importance on the customer service piece. So I guess with that aspect, for Shannon, what have your folks seen with the kind of the support side of things when they've had problems with either the MedVault or LogRx, and not necessarily a problem, but just questions in general? What have they done to kind of, what have you seen from a manager? Because I know you're probably the first one they call when there is a problem.
Yeah, yeah, they just call and I can walk them through pretty much anything for it, even if they think like they made a mistake, like if they finish a call, they threw out the vial that has the code on it that they need. It's all fixable. It's all easy to handle. But yeah, they call me first.
Yeah, that's one of the kind of the areas we try to help provide a channel to minimize customer issues. But yeah, I know when I was the chief, I had multiple phones sitting next to my bed at night just for those calls. Do you find, are there measurable tools you found to show how compliance has gotten better by using the MedVault or LogRx?
Yeah, so for this New York State, we do a semi-annual count every 6 months, and it used to take pretty much all day to do with the paper ones, but now it literally it takes minutes. Only because I make it take longer because I double check and quadruple check everything. But it matches up with everyone. Everyone's doing their checks that they're supposed to be doing, and everyone is documenting their narcotic usage and waste appropriately. So it definitely has cleared up a lot of guesswork.
Do you see many discrepancies anymore?
No. Nope, I haven't had, knock on wood, everything, but I haven't had anything crazy.
And then what kind of audits do you do aside from the biannual required one from the state?
So the way we have our sets set up is that the end users have access to one vault that has all the pre-made pouches in it, and then our narcotic agents have the access to another vault that has all the spare narcotics in it. So every time we have to restock a pouch, that second vault gets opened, and every time it gets opened and every time it gets any sort of movement, we do an audit on it. We make sure everything's in there, we count everything. So it's pretty regular, but it's a lot easier to do nowadays.
I mean, I guess it's not such an issue if you don't have discrepancies anymore, but what was kind of your approach in the past? So if we have like a listener or attendee who wants to see how to best start investigations or deal with discrepancies, what was your approach?
Question everyone pretty much. Wherever we see the discrepancies, where we would just start asking the medics what happened, why is this missing, or why is this not accounted for? And 9 times out of 10, it just ends up being an overlook, an oversight. They don't realize it, and then it's easily documented after that.
And then Tamara, is there something you've seen on your end when an agency calls in? I know we get calls occasionally saying, hey, we've had a drug that's missing in here, or hey, we had the drug with the cap that was popped. We're trying to figure out when that occurred. Can you help us out? What do you see from the Knox side?
Yeah, so I think the recent addition of the notifications feature has really allowed agencies to take a look at their data in a different way. So it really kind of points out the important data. So, once you have a system in place, it can be, if it's not a good implementation, it's just data, right? And now you have even potentially a bigger problem than you had with your paper logs, because you can get so much more data. So, with our system, and I know also with yours, Clive, the ability to have notifications to call attention to the really important things that you need to act on in your system has been a huge benefit to people. And I know, your system, I think, sends out notifications for drugs that might be expiring and other conditions. So I would pose that question back to you. Like, what do you hear from your users about the advantages in that respect?
I think it's the same for us with the notifications, because we'll notify administrators for late checks or checks that haven't been done, missing drugs, low inventory, expiring drugs. And so we started out, I think, with just the notifications of expiring drugs. And we found that the administrators wanted to just be able to focus on their normal day-to-day jobs. I mean, in the big picture, narcotics tracking is probably a tiny part of Shannon's day, right? And so it's like, hey, you've got a personnel man, you got to deal with personnel, you got to deal with training, operational readiness is the first thing. And so we found with the notifications that just helped ease their mind. They could keep that to the side because they knew that if there was a problem, they would get alerted. So I think that really helps with the peace of mind, because we kind of looked at it from the perspective of how can we help be another staff member of the organization? How can we use our software to be like just another person that might be in the office handling this stuff so that people like Shannon could just focus on their day to day.
I think that's really a super point, Clive. It kind of right sizes what should be such a small part of the day in a life, so that you can focus on the more important aspects, and the service delivery aspects of, what the agency really needs to do.
Yeah, and we found, just for an example, the Portland Fire Department. They're a huge agency. They got like 30 something fire stations, 50 something units. And for every month, they would send a light duty firefighter out for 3 days and they would go and audit every single station in their narcotics. And then, of course, by the end of the third day, something has probably changed. Without a doubt, something's changed in that inventory audit. But by being able to track something in real time, they no longer have to use that person. And granted, you send a firefighter to 30 stations over 3 days, they're going to sit down and talk. So probably not all of that time was 100% efficient, but nonetheless, they saved those 3 days from that one employee and not having to do that. And so we always look at operational efficiencies, which is where my brain goes of having been in their shoes. And so it's like, okay, how can I make their job easier? And so the efficiency piece is huge, which I'm guessing you've seen the same with having an efficient med vault, having something that doesn't lose signal and they can't get in. And so it's just a tool that they can rely on.
Absolutely. And here's kind of just an interesting anecdote. So we had gotten outreach from one of our departments who was thanking us for the robustness of the product because their ambulance had been stolen. And that just blew my mind, right? Like, that's a thing. And the stolen ambulance, of course, was trashed and they stripped everything they could strip out of it. But the med vault held. So on top of this horrible experience of having to, procure a new ambulance or get this thing back operational, they were very grateful that they did not lose the narcotics. And so they didn't have to do all of the paperwork and regulatory, stuff that goes along with that because, the narcotics were still in the ambulance, despite everything else being destroyed pretty much when they got there. So just another small way, and things you never think about, at least, we don't as civilians.
Yeah. I was the fire chief up at Lake Tahoe for a period, and it's before my time, but there was a call where one of the medics, I think they might have been on the ambulance, not with the fire department, they dropped a fentanyl while they're taking a patient out, and it fell in the snow. Because, as you know, Lake Tahoe gets a lot of snow, and they ended up combing through, looking everywhere, and they couldn't find it. And so it wasn't like it was stolen. It was just lost. But just that little vial of fentanyl, because it's a narcotic controlled substance and it can kill someone. It was such an ordeal. You have to get the law enforcement to investigate it. You report it to the DEA. Like, it is a really, really big deal, as it should be. And so I'm sure to the owner or the agency that had the ambulance stolen, just the peace of mind that the narcotics were intact, I'm sure was a huge, huge relief, because the insurance can take care of the rest. But man, once you get on the DEA's radar, you're on the radar.
Right. And I
So
think the flip side is true as well for organizations who are, taking on ALS maybe for the first time, and now with the requirements changing and they have to have their own licensing. Many agencies have had our integrated solutions accepted by the state's, compliance people. And so it just makes it a lot easier to say, yeah, I'm doing what they're doing. I'm doing what New Windsor is doing. And it really, I think, makes anybody who follows Shannon and her team, um, it really paves the way for easier adoption, even just from a regulatory perspective, and makes that effort less as well.
yeah, Shannon, from your perspective on a leadership, I guess, view, what have you seen from kind of having now the benefit of that real-time accountability, or just, everything I rambled on about? What did you see as a leader or as a leader?
It's nice. When just a few years ago, probably about 4 years ago now, I was in the hospital because I just delivered my son, and we were getting a check or like a spot check from the state. And I remember watching, like laying in the hospital bed and watching the cameras in the office of all the binders laid out. I knew everything was fine, but you still worry. So it's just like trying to read their faces and see if it was all right and make sure everything was good. And now it's just, we had our normal check that we have, and they asked how many meds we have. I was able to pull it all right up. They saw the security, they saw that it was all accounted for, and it was so much easier. No more stressing.
Nice. Yeah, I guess that's a good lesson for other departments. Was there ever like an aha moment with kind of moving on to technology? Like, hey, this was exactly what we needed. Was there any kind of one thing that stood out as the aha moment in that aspect?
Probably our first state check, like when the state came to do our normal inspection and everything, and we just pulled out the medications, and they just took my phone and I showed them where everything is and how many of it, and they counted it, and it was over in 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Just to move on to our Q&A here pretty quick, I have one more question here for Tamara, and that's just, we've covered a lot. Before we go to the Q&A, is there any kind of recommendation or advice you have for if an agency just wants to start small? I mean, change is always a challenge. So from the Knox perspective with like the med vaults and station vaults, what would be your advice just starting out?
Yeah, I think, the first step is, I think, really just, talk to your peers and find out what they've done. And, it's really, I'll put in a little plug for you, Clive, because I think from an inventory control perspective, and I've dealt with a lot of inventory control systems, yours is one of the easiest to get started with and implement. There's really it's so fast to get started. Then really think about, where you want to put additional controls in place. Do you need different hardware in your ambulances? Maybe you're changing out from something with a mechanical lock. We have application specialists that can help people through that. And, we can connect you with peers as well, of people who have been through it and can help an agency through, the planning process. So, that would be my recommendation, is just, contact peers, contact Knox, contact LogRx, and we can help you, really construct the best systems for your organizational needs.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I like to say when I talk to other departments that we built LogRx to be firefighter proof, just because it's got just the two buttons at the bottom. But I be careful, because sometimes people can be offended by that until they hear that I was a firefighter as well. But yeah, we try to keep things simple. Okay, so we've kind of run out of time for our questions. So I want to make sure we give attention to our audience. So we've got some questions here. I'm going to start with the first one. This one's for Shannon. It's from another New York State agency. They currently use Knox Med Vaults. They're mounted in the secondary keyed locking cabinet, but just to make sure they've got a double lock for their controlled substance. And so they want to know, does your agency follow the same double lock rule as the med vault replaces, or does the med vault replace the double lock?
Yeah, we might be a little overkill on it. The vault is in the normal vault that everyone else has access to. It's dual locked. You have to have a medic and either another medic or an EMT with you to open it. And then we put it in an office basically that is also locked and is only accessible by a certain amount of people. So we might do a little overkill, but it's always secured with 2 or more locks.
That's great. I know that sometimes the double lock can be a challenge. We have customers that will keep the Versed in their first due kit, and they leave the fentanyl locked up on the fire engine. And so if they need the fentanyl, they have to run back out to the rig. So that's the second lock can be a challenge. The next one's for Tamara. I'm planning to utilize the badges in the future, the badge reader. Do I need to wait for the badge implementation before purchasing a med vault? I don't want to have to repurchase vaults if I don't have to.
Yeah. So I think the answer to that is you should know what badge you're going to use because we do have to confirm compatibility. If that is open, then we can make some recommendations. But if you know you're going to use badges in the future and you want to future-proof yourself, we allow the badge readers to work in PIN mode only. So you can use pins, and then when you're ready to implement, you've got your badges in place. It's a simple, flip of the switch in the software, and then you can operate them in badge mode.
The next question is for me. It says, does LogRx have the ability to do inventory management across trucks for gear and all supplies or just medications? So we do all medications. We do a few supplies like iGel laryngoscope blades, and we do track like EZ-IO needles because they're so expensive. But we are working on other supply modules. That'll take a little bit longer. We will be releasing our vehicle check module probably in December or January. So we have a few agencies testing it out right now. I can say that we went down these paths because they seemed like, customers asked for it, so let's build it out. But we identified that we built such a great module for narcotics tracking that if we did a haphazard, just something to throw out there of checking inventory on other stuff, it might tarnish our name. And so we were very, very particular on how we wanted to roll out any new products. And so that's why we're going to do the vehicle check first, and the other ones will be down the road. And to that point, that's the reason we partnered with Knox. I mean, there's plenty of other narcotic safes out there, but having been a firefighter since the 90s, I recognize the quality of Knox and kind of the mentality if we want to make sure we provide the best product to our customers. And so that's why we built our integration with them. Let's see. So for Shannon, looking back on your journey, what's one thing you wish your team had known before starting this modernization process?
That I'm not sure. I guess just in general that we were going to do it. I wasn't sure if it was going to be what I wanted at first, so I didn't quite broadcast it yet when we first got it, but it would have been nice to kind of have more input from their end also before launching it. Other than that, I think we were all mostly pretty transparent so they can know what was going on. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but fortunately, it's going to be more prevalent. It's going to be a more way for everyone to go.
Yeah. I can say that as the head of a department or one of the leaders of an organization, being progressive is risky because if you introduce something new, you own it. And if it doesn't work out well, everyone's going to point their finger at you. And so I used to be part of obviously chiefs associations, and we'd all talk, and the status quo chief is the one that's probably got the most job security because they're not putting themselves out there to introduce anything new because they're just sitting in their office trying to keep things as normal and wait out the job till they can retire. And so there's a lot of pressure when you introduce something new. So yeah, I could see how, let's see. So the next question is about Knox Connect and LogRx, and it's asking if they're linked together. And the answer is yes. That's kind of how we've started off the relationship of creating the best program for the end user. And so they can have everything all in one spot. And so it asks what the integration entails, and is it easy to do the connection? And the answer is yes, it's very easy. In fact, we do everything for the organization. So when we talked to Shannon, she was one of the first organizations we did testing with when we built the integration. All we needed was the serial numbers from the safes, which are right there on Knox Connect. And then the folks at Knox and then our engineering team, we work on the back end to get the integration done. And it actually it can literally happen in like 20 minutes. So we wanted to make it easy. There's no additional cost. We just want to make something simple. And for those technical folks out there, it's called an API, which is the way the two systems talk together. And let's see. Okay, so there's a question on, can users use their personal cell phones, or can it be on an engine assigned iPad? So I'm guessing this is for our software. And the answer is yes, it can be a personal phone. Our system, it doesn't save any data on the actual cell phone. And we do that on purpose because if there's ever an investigation, that's called discoverable, as everyone probably knows, so that they can take the person's phone and say, okay, this is part of the investigation. We're going to take a look at your phone. Our system doesn't save any data. It just sends it straight to the cloud. And that way it's nothing stored on the person's phone. So they can use their personal phone, which we recommend because they can use the biometrics for logging in and doing verifications. But I understand, having been both a chief and a union vice president, that sometimes staff might ask for a cell phone allowance if you ask them to use their personal phone. So it can be either or, a fire engine phone or personal phone. So it's up to the organization and the user. Let's see. Do the end users have to set up two separate softwares? So we still have our software. And then Tamara, I don't know if you want to talk about Knox Connect.
Sure. So essentially, you set up Knox Connect, and a lot of times, especially with dual agencies, the software is already in use in another part of the organization. So it's simply, when you buy the med vaults, they appear there, the tab shows up, and you just continue, on your way. LogRx, I think that's because it's cloud-based. That goes pretty quickly. Probably, getting the app into users' hands and getting them trained is also very easy. You can set users up in one system and extract them and load them up into the second system. So I think we recommend that you use the LogRx system as a system of record for the users who will use the med vaults. And then we've got a bulk import utility to make that easy. And locations, need to be kept in sync. So you can understand that, when the door opens in the med vault, you're seeing it in the LogRx system in the right, location. But that's really, all there is to it in terms of, making sure that your system can report on your users and devices the way you want them to.
Yeah. And the same with our software. We export the reports in CSV, Excel, or PDF files, so you can have the reports from our software and the Knox side. Last question. Let's see. This is for Shannon. Would you give advice to an EMS manager? Is it worth it to adopt these programs with the financial side?
Oh, 100%. Without a doubt, it's so worth it. It just, like you've said a few times, it frees up your time, so you're not spending it all going over papers or anything else. And honestly, it's cost effective, in my opinion. But it's so much easier.
Excellent. That is all the questions we got from the folks, and we're about out of time anyway. So any closing thoughts, Shannon?
I don't have anything else.
Tamara?
I think we, very much appreciate, Shannon, your, kind of flagship of the integration and coming on today and explaining the benefits and your journey through that process. Also, we appreciate the partnership, Clive, with LogRx. I think the two companies alone have great products. The two of us together, really provide a very powerful system that can be leveraged to simplify compliance and really streamline daily operations. So that's my thought.
Excellent. Thank you. And a big thank you to Tiffany for organizing this and building out our slides. All of our contact information is here on this slide if you want to reach out to any of us, if you have further questions or questions about our programs. And then we will be sending out a copy of this video. And so even though we don't offer CE's continuing education for this course for your paramedic licenses and so on, if you want to take the video, give it to your EMS office, and that they can, put it into their training software to provide it to your staff. You can get CEs that way. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and please reach out with any further questions or future webinars from Knox. So thank you, and everyone stay safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Clive and
Thanks.
Shannon, for being here today.
Thank you.